Listen, we'll move on. We'll talk about the big one as it is. The game that had us shoot this podcast today.
Yeah. Had me don me kit in honour of the occasion. It's the final weekend.
Grand Slam decider in Cardiff. Wales don't lose these. They don't, generally speaking.
They don't tend to. No. Yeah, it's every time it's in the lead up, and Wales even are away and shooting for a Grand Slam. I just can't recall them ever not doing it.
I believe I looked it up. I wish I had the figure to hand, but I don't. But I haven't essentially when they've been going for Grand Slams.
Yeah,
and even that game against England that wasn't for a Grand Slam on the last day, where England were going for a Grand Slam and Wales were going for the championship, and they beat them 30 points to 3.
Yeah,
similar kind of buzz.
Yeah,
could be a similar kind of Wales we see. I mean, they're going to be hungry. England were quite confident going into that game, as I recall, but actually it was a brittle enough confidence in the sense that they'd actually not been that good in the championship, which is a comparable place to where Ireland are now.
Indeed,
coming off that French win, going we're back on track, and then Wales are going, we need to win, and that could be the picture.
This could be the picture if we want it more, and like in the context of going for the win and such a Grand Slam, such a great historic thing, versus Ireland just kind of fishing for a bit of form. It's not as emboldened or brave, and they are going away from home, and the roof is likely going to be closed.
It is closed. We've decided
is that what that is.
Yeah, I believe that was a Welsh decision.
That's the right decision.
Fair enough. Sexton has good memories with a closed roof there.
They're all class rugby players, so it shouldn't be a problem for either of them. And
it's the atmosphere.
And the atmosphere is the thing, and that's like the final day of the Six Nations. That's what it's all about. I want to hear that anthem being sung to the roof closed, and the absolute noise in it. It's going to be a phenomenal occasion. Great way to sign off the championship, although it's not actually quite the end. We had the Calcutta Cup after, but it's going to be signed, sealed and delivered, be it for England or for Wales. Likely, like Ireland's still holding out hope, and it would be a very strange thing to have happen that if Ireland win this game and then have Scotland win the other game and gift Ireland the championship.
It'd be a strange feeling for Ireland winning the championship for England.
Winning the championship and being the third best team in it in that scenario. Or, this little kind of, to quote Warren Gatton, like kissing your sister, to beat Wales in Cardiff, and then give the championship to England, is a little unpleasant choice. That
kissing your sister is all negative, though. It's a very strange expression.
It is still, yes, but I still find it hilarious that he said it in the context of that. But I actually, it stacks up similarly to all these Ireland-Wales games. It's going to be very tight.
The key is defence for Wales.
That's it. Tight is in more ways than one. Scoreboard tightness, but also I think exchanges. Ireland, just especially given the team they've named with Sean O'Brien back in there, he's had many a war in the fringes with this Welsh team, and similar Alan Wynne-Jones will be familiar as well. Him and CJ Stander with Peter O'Mahony. That's like a very bludgeoning kind of back three to be taken in.
We know what Ireland are going to do. We know that it's failed against Wales in the past. We know that it can be successful because they're brilliant players and they're super strong. And Wales, in terms of their tight five, they're good, but they're not as dynamic and physical as those Irish boys. They aren't, with the exception of Alan Wynne and Tipperick. There's a lot of, they're good, they could be physically deficient against this Irish pack, but they're very, very good defensively from 1 to 15.
This is it. Their technique and their system can just nullify that advantage. Which you think you are right in saying, and I think most Welsh fans would agree in saying that. Ireland are generally quite big and their forwards are, as well as being mobile, quite nifty as well on their feet. Good for offloads, good at adjusting their feet. But Wales are great on off the ball, though, is just getting low, which cuts all that out down to size, getting low
and stop,
and then chop and stop, but also chop and slow. And Ireland, every system struggles when you're adding seconds to their ruck by being a nuisance. But Ireland's especially is, even though it's quite slow as far as a tempo is concerned, it's deliberate as far as that rhythm. And Wales are excellent at distorting and stopping that, and Ireland are very much designed on their shapes and their pods kind of sweeping in a very steady rhythm and flow. So even if you stutter that a second and the ball carriers with their pods,
the ruck is exactly as long as you want it to be for your backline to get into this deceptive picture. And if it's a little longer and everyone's flat-footed for a moment,
then
Johnny's getting frustrated. And,
that's the picture that has been painted many times before, and in Cardiff more often than most. And that could come to pass. Alternatively, Ireland can and have in this fixture before tactically kind of done some clever things that have caught Wales out, be that some clever little offloads around the tight just to move that point of contact so that their disruptive work isn't being done. Kicks have worked well, but not bombs usually against Wales.
No, grass finders.
It's grass finders that can pay some dividends because their wingers do play high and they're back and high enough. They tend to drift up, to be honest, more so than they play high. They just have a habit of kind of ball watching and creeping up.
Totally.
And the space.
It's a lot to ask. As good as he is, it's a lot to ask at Liam Williams, who is, as he self-ascribed himself. He describes himself the bomb diffuser.
The bomb diffuser, and to be fair, he's very good at it.
Very good at that. Yeah. So wooden box kicks would be an ill-advised.
It would be a stupid play.
Yes,
is what it
and
is.
so would bombs.
Yeah, and that was what it was encouraging. Just to go back to last week from Ireland's point of view, the French performance was great as far as varying that in terms of exiting. They were moving the point of attack. We've been saying all tournament and seeing all tournament that Conor Murray's a little bit off form as far as accuracy and speed of pass and of kick, and so his box kicks, as well as being telegraphed, have actually not been quite as on the money. So going back, resorting to that tactic exclusively is silly. Disposing of it entirely is silly as well. I'm sure they'll bring out one or two to mix it up if you're playing well. But I think ideally, for exits, certainly. I think a few offensive ones they like to do as well off the 22.
I think they'll have Johnny do it if they are doing it.
Might do. But for exits, you have Ringrose, who has a great boot, which means sweeping passes from left to right can end up with him, and he can clear it.
What you're asking for.
And then Stockdale has a great left boot, so sweeping exit moves rather than right to left can end in his hands, and he can use the left.
And he's got that advantage where he causes a bit of fear as well. So the chances are, if you try and exit at that left side and you get the ball as far as Stockdale and there's a bit of space, that if he's got a man here and a man there and a whole backfield in behind, Liam Williams is probably going to be prevented from rushing back to cover that backfield because he'd be a little wary of that Stockdale beating the man or chipping it ahead into that short space that's in front of him. So then that leaves it open for just different kind of and reading what Liam Williams is doing,
which Stockdale does seem to have license to do. So it's about moving that point of contact and not being afraid to do so. Where Ireland get
in their own half is key. It's like that's because everything tightens up when you get nearer the line. Like once we know in the 22 it's going to become that bludgeony war, but there is license to move Wales around a little bit to expose maybe that outside shoulder Jay Davis and the link up that goes on there
between 10 metre lines. That's definitely there. That's definitely a weakness
between 10 metre lines. They have the whole Ireland mantra of attack. No, I would use the whole pitch.
No, I mean between 10 metre lines as in in the middle of the pitch.
You were talking about the
10 metre line to 10 metre line in the constant halfway line. In that area in the pitch, like you're saying, there's room, and very often Jonathan Davis can be found a little bit of a disconnect.
Very good
because of those wingers, that winger tendency as well. He has to do a lot from that channel.
He's very good at shutting down what goes on his inside, but when you actually get into his outside shoulder, you see some weaknesses sometimes, both in his tackling and in terms of just they're actually a little bit exposed if you can get outside them, if you can flood those channels with a bit of something like France did in the opening half of the opening test.
Exactly.
There's profit to be had there for sure. And
it just takes courage getting there. It takes courage and accuracy to get there, and sometimes without confidence this Ireland team just revert inside, even when like the idea is safety in contact or safety in recycling, but that's just profoundly untrue, because particularly against Wales there is no safety in contact. Even if you win the contact, it's not a safe area. You need support players there, and you need them there bridging over. You also need the ball gone quickly, because even a man there is no guarantee that the ruck's going to be clean. So it like that needs to be appreciated throughout the whole course of the game, and the point of attack needs to be moved. Likewise, Sexton similarly needs to be protected, which the moving of the point of the contact has the knock-on effect of keeping Sexton a bit safer, because he's not as onto the line. They
did that very well last week. Because that's something that France looked to do and actually didn't really get a chance to do, apart from like one incident in the second half, which was just outrageous. They just shot him into the backfield. He threw the ball away and just barged into him anyway, just like, I want to hit you, Johnny. But for the most part, France were the pioneers of the hit Johnny and make sure every time he touches the ball he hits the dirt approach. And they didn't lay a glove on him because Ireland did vary it. The presence of Gary Ringrose, massive for Ireland.
And even with those one or two errors, like I saw I can't remember who it was who was suggesting that Gary Ringrose's form was in question, or that his selection was in question, but I'm like, we on this podcast are on the opposite opinion. It's like every time Ringrose is out and you're left with one of Farrell, Aki or Henshaw or two of those three to fill those centre halves. What you're left with is just such a lack of subtlety, and sure, they're all big physical
lack
units
of distribution. It's another. It's not even subtlety. It's another distributor.
Yeah,
because you don't have one at fullback. We've decided that it's not going to be Carberry ever. It's going to be Larmer or Carney or maybe Conway or hopefully not ever Henshaw again.
Addison.
Addison could be a distributor, but we haven't seen any of him.
No,
and it's probably going to be too late.
Haley is also in the mix somewhere in the background.
In the World Cup mix.
Yeah, no.
So from Ireland's perspective, it's getting a second distributor in there to help Johnny, and the only option that they have is a singular. It's Ringrose, and he's massive and he's very classy as well when he plays.
He really is. He really is. That's why you can't even like one or two drops or like a knock grounding of the ball, albeit that was a beautiful take.
It's a fantastic play. He put himself there to score it, but
raging. But he's all class all day. So he is vital for Ireland in getting to those in feeding those outside channels and taking the emphasis off the Murray Sexton axis and the Murray Sexton show, just putting that little bit of doubt in Wales's defence as to where to pack their pods for this disruptive play that they're going to be looking to do.
With ball in hand, it should be trying to emulate France. It should be flooding those wide channels. I think the approach they will go with will be more 2014 style, if you remember that game. That was in Dublin. It's really harking back, but it was the first year that Joe Schmidt was in Ireland when we won the Six Nations.
Is that the one where we reputedly kicked the leather off the ball?
Yes, that was Gatland's comment on it. Absolutely stuffed them with a great line-out maul.
Yeah.
And ended up, this was the great Welsh team who were coming off back-to-back championships and had however many players in that Lions team that won in Australia. They were flying high. Yeah. And Ireland did them, their first team to do them that year. And it was with ruthless kicking and then a really great line-out drive that Wales couldn't deal with. Yeah, Wales's defensive maul has been good, but Ireland's maul last week was pretty tasty as well.
And some of the variations on it.
Wales very much pack an angle, so if Ireland can peel off successfully, that could be an area of profit for them.
Sure, has been before.
Just needs to be reffed so that the guys who are coming in at the angle can't just swim up the side.
I don't know who the ref is actually.
Neither do I.
Didn't look that up. That is always pertinent information, which is annoying because, in our idealised version of what we like to look in rugby, the ref doesn't matter, but it very does.
Speaking relatively historically, virtually every time in recent times, in the era of Sexton, I guess you could say, that Ireland have beaten Wales, it's been a big, convincing win. They actually really genuinely got the better of them up front. That's been the pattern, and it has happened. Yeah. But every time that the games are tight,
Wales get the winning
play, and that's like they did it against
last year's one, wasn't it?
No, and I was going to say last year was sort of an exception to that, but actually if you watch that game back, Ireland did dominate that game, and up front were probably 20-point victory to the good, but Wales were in that very Scarlet's flowy state, and Ireland's defence was a little loose, and basically Ireland were dominating and then
finally scoring,
and then Wales were responding with an insta try, and then it was back to more Irish dominance, and it was more of a lesson in Ireland's both some Wales's classy attack and Ireland's maybe not being clinical enough, and maybe not doing what they did to France last week, which is just keeping them down there.
That's true. Well, this is the difference as well. It's such an interesting question that Ireland ask of you, and Georgia in tier 2 as well, where it's like, what is the benefit? Is there more benefit to 7 points instantly scored and then you get a chance to go again once your exit's right and you're back 7 points to the good? Or is there more to be said for 10 minutes of dominance of smashing 20 tackles set, turnover, exit, 25 tackles set, turnover, exit, 30 tackles set, turnover, exit, 20 tackles set and try, and it's like that's 10 minutes of game time plus a whole load of offense that you've registered, and it's like that just pays. It's like miles in the legs, miles in the clock.
Those are the two teams, Georgia and Ireland, that model themselves that way. And actually the Ireland-France game almost had a picture in that first half of like a Rugby Europe Championship game. It was reminded me of the Georgia-Spain game that I watched a few weeks back, when it was just the game was just being spent entirely in the French 22. Ireland were moving at their own pace. They weren't being clinical enough in the sense that they weren't actually finding the line. They were making some errors, but it didn't matter. France had turned over the ball and realised that it was just like a 2-minute break before they had to go back to defending because they couldn't do anything. And it was that same sort of negative, depressing picture of just more tackles and more tackles being broken, then eventually that try, and then sort of an insta very good exit from Ireland, showing their class, and then straight back there and straight back to slowing it down and putting more pressure on you.
Yeah.
It's colourful. I mean, from an Irish fan's perspective, there are concerns in the sense that we know what can go wrong.
Yeah.
We may see some of it this weekend.
Yeah.
And Georgie would say the same, but in terms of from a global rugby picture, it's
nice
kind of cool to have one of the elite teams in rugby being very different in that regard.
Compared to the All, like not everyone's going to be the All Blacks, and no one's going to be as good at the All Blacks at what they do. But it's a very different way of playing the game, and it's like there's drawbacks and benefits. It's a great way to be a front runner in a game.
It's a good way to play the All Blacks.
It is a good way. That's true too. Stylistically, the All Blacks don't like it.
Well, they don't like not having the ball for really long periods of time.
Exactly, and it's similar to France last week. You see a team that just loves to play the catch pass game, not get to do that and have to make tackle after tackle, and then suddenly when they do get their chance, they're a little sloppy. See, like last week with France, Dupont a few times making the wrong option, ball in hand, which is unlike him. Similarly in the All Blacks game, Kieran Reid, after getting a stinger from one of those awkward tackles, then suddenly he can't catch a ball, which was a clean through for a try. And it's like these are all the knock-on effects that are put in through that labour. Wales, however, just have such a strike rate as well as an identity that's based on their defence. That just kind of makes this a really bad matchup for that Ireland team.
It is,
because Wales are going to be prepared to tackle them all day, turn over and score from said turnover. And then, as we've seen against this Ireland team, if you go ahead, and particularly if you go 2 scores ahead, you are in such a great position that they're suddenly all of that plan is moot and bad, and Ireland are now, despite having players who are like world class, this formula for this team and how they play is so bad for getting themselves back into that kind of game.
It's a curious one as well. Like, I suspect plan A for Ireland, like their first port of call, as I said, like that 2014 style, is actually just taking them on in that area and winning up front. And that's the straightforward, easy thing. Like, you win your collisions, you get a couple of offloads in the tight, which will be important for them. You get dominance of the scrum. You saw a bit more last week. We were calling for it, and we did see it attacking that French scrum. And then you saw a very good line-out mull. And you'll see Ireland try to employ all of those and really squeeze Wales up front in the tight. Have Wales's defence not be able to deal with the tackles. That's going to be plan A. And then, your plan B is that other stuff that we were talking about, maybe flooding the wide channels, moving the ball a bit more, getting outside them.
They're more kind of tactics.
Exactly. But that's kind of my point, is that the plan, it's not less of a plan B. It's those are the kind of pictures that you'd probably only see from Ireland if they were winning the contest anyway.
This is
and that's kind of that's the curious part of it, is that, like, you feel like if Ireland aren't winning those contacts, they're not going to be able to go there. And that's probably what they might need to do. Like, my suspicion is that Ireland will go for that physical jugular, will go to try and dominate the scrum, dominate the line out drive, dominate those collisions, and they might not be able to do it.
Well, they'll probably have moments of doing just that, but then also other moments of Wales getting the better of them in those things, and that's where I think tight is another word you can breathe, the same word brought back again to describe that. Is just Wales are going to make it frustrate Ireland. They know how Ireland want to play, and they're going to be coy in the way they play them. Even they are going to front up there, but they're going to be slightly awkward.
And listen, like, if Ireland want to go through 40 phases, like, there's one picture, like, it massively increases the likelihood of a turnover, and then the other thing that's going to be important is discipline. You might get the picture of Wales giving away penalties in that department, which will give Ireland either the chance to build a score or to go to the jugular if they fancy
their line out maul, like you're saying.
So that's an interesting picture for Irish success. But as it is, if the game stays tight, if it becomes a chippy 3-pointer kind of game, or it's in its 12-9 regions, or 13-10 regions, when it gets to crunch time, you would back probably Wales on the day with more to play for and a bit more hustle about them.
This is it. We're talking about Ireland trying to find that gap outside the 13 channel. Like, Wales are going to flood that anyway, because like, off turnover ball, they're going to be looking to get there. They have some game breakers in those channels. They know how to handle themselves in the tram lines as far as fix and give or step and go, and they just can execute all kinds of tries from all kinds. They have in their playmakers in the back line who don't mind kicking, don't mind running it. They have basic shapes that keep them together and linked, but basically they're ready to go from anywhere in any kind of way. So it's very dangerous. They can up the tempo at any point, or slow it right down. So, like, their versatility is going to be very handy in trying to soak what Ireland have and then strike when Ireland don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And very often that can be the undoing of this Ireland team, is when a clinical Wales do strike at the right time. And
And the tries are always different. They're always cool little pictures. Very often wingers tries, as you see, scored against Ireland. And you'll likely see maybe they'll go to that crossfield kick again to Josh Adams. They'll like that match up in the air against Keith Earls.
Every team that plays Ireland does. So, the matchup tends to be a vertically challenged one.
They did struggle against Scotland. They have only scored 9 tries in the tournament so far. But my suspicion, they're not they haven't. You could look at it one way and say, English teams gone by that have gone for Grand Slams and it's been beyond them, have kind of rode their luck on their way there and then got found out in the last day. But to be honest with you, I think this Wales team are a little better than that. I don't think they've shown their full hand yet.
The argument for that is the Italy performance they put in, but the changes they made to that team and the way they played the game as well was what contributed to that being more like that performance than the one that Ireland.
They were nervy in the second half against Scotland. They were with their full team,
genuinely, but they were away from home.
And that's there was the point. I think at home going for a Grand Slam, Wales becomes a difficult machine to stop. And I went against Ireland last week. I went for a risky France call, picturing a different game. But Ireland were wise to it and played the game beautifully and saw off what could have been. You look back at it and think France are just awful. It's not really the full picture. It could have been a tricksy one if France were played into the game, but Ireland played them straight out of it. And maybe you'll see that with Wales. But my suspicion is Wales.
They're two teams that know each other very, very well, and it's one of the best rivalries in the whole tournament, but also in rugby as a whole. So it's just going to be amazing. And like you're saying, I can see both of those pictures very clearly because I've seen them. I've seen this game so often over the last few years, and yes, we know what happens when it goes well. We know what happens when it very doesn't. We know it more often than not doesn't go that well again in Cardiff. Ireland have a reputation for spoiling the party. Wales have a reputation for going the whole way when they get in a flow and not being derailed. So ultimately, I don't know. You're similar to you. I'm probably leaning towards giving it towards Wales, just certainly as favourites. My bookies hat is going for Wales. I'm going for Ireland though. I'm looking for Ireland to win it first.
That's bad news for Wales because his track record versus my track record in terms of calling performances doesn't stack up well for me. So Jeez, the daffodils, you'd be worried a little bit.
Well, the daffodils have actually been dwindling around here, but that's mainly the weather. But it's going to be a class game. It's going to be the game of the tournament. Well, so game of the weekend anyway, for certain. Could that be the game of the tournament? I'm hoping so.
Yeah. Before we move on, shout out to Cian Healy and the discrimination that is going on in the game against prop forwards. Cian Healy was unreal. Broke the back of the French.
And was man of the match.
Was
l'homme de match.
He was very important to what Ireland did. Breaking the back of the French scrum was key. Getting their props bouncing backwards, himself and Ty Furlong. But he was making more players. He was getting the go for it. He was clearly man of the match. But he's a prop. He only plays 50 minutes. So they can't give it to him. It's a conspiracy. They don't give them World Player of the Years. They don't give them man of the matches. And it's wrong. Very important players.
Propgate. We're alluding to it.
Cian Healy was clearly man of the match last weekend. They wouldn't award it to him because he's a prop. That's just gross.
Well, now you're in danger of lobbying on behalf of the church, which is that's a bit of a risky thing to be doing. That is an aside, but I'm inclined to agree.
Very important.
Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you want to subscribe, there should be a button up here. Don't forget to give us a like and share with your friends, and please leave comments down below. We love the conversation. Thanks.